The final bell. The final bell echoed through the stadium, a clang that vibrated in Ali's bones. He stood centering, chest heaving, sweat plastering his hair to his forehead. The roar was deafening, a tidal wave of sound that crashed over him. He had done it. Again. His eyes, still sharp despite the brutal dance he just performed, scanned the ecstatic mass of faces. A sea of humanity, united in this moment of shared exhilaration. Flags waved, camera flashes pulsed like distant lightning, and the air hung thick with the scent of sweat, beer, and raw excitement. He raised a glove, acknowledging the adulation, but his mind was already searching, restless. His trainer, Angelo Dundee, clapped him on the back, shouting something he couldn't quite hear over the din. But Ali just smiled, a flash of white teeth against his dark skin, and gently pushed past, needing to see them all, connect with them, the people who fueled his fire. Then he saw it. A simple piece of cardboard, held aloft amidst the frenzy, marred with hastily scrawled words. "You saved my life." The sign was held by a man standing near the front of the crowd, his face etched with an emotion that cut through the celebratory haze. It wasn't just joy or excitement. It was something deeper, more profound. A raw, vulnerable gratitude that resonated within Ali. He felt a tug, a pull, stronger than the urging of his corner men, stronger than the throbbing in his knuckles. He had to reach him. Ignoring the protests of his entourage, he stepped off the elevated ring apron and began to push his way through the throng. Each step was met with outstretched hands, shouts of praise, requests for autographs. But Ali's focus was locked on the man with the sign. He moved with a singular purpose, weaving through the crowd like a seasoned matador evading a charging bull. Finally, he reached him. The man was younger than he'd initially thought, maybe late 20s, with tired eyes and a hesitant smile. He was dressed in ordinary clothes, a simple button-down shirt and jeans, a stark contrast to the flashy attire surrounding them. As Ali drew closer, the man's composure crumbled. Tears welled in his eyes, and his hand trembled so violently that the sign threatened to fall. "Hey," Ali said softly, his voice a low rumble that somehow cut through the noise. He reached out, his gloved hand gently touching the man's arm. "Hey, what's your name?" The man swallowed hard, his voice cracking. "Michael," he whispered. "My name is Michael." Without a word, Ali pulled Michael into a hug. A brief, powerful embrace that transcended the spectacle, the fame, the victory. He felt Michael's body shaking, the silent sobs racking his frame. For a moment, the roar of the crowd faded. The flashing cameras blurred. It was just Ali and Michael, connected by something unseen, something unbreakable. A shared humanity. A bond forged not in the ring, but in the crucible of life. When they broke apart, Michael's eyes were red-rimmed, but a flicker of hope shone within them. He looked at Ali, not with the adulation of a fan, but with the gratitude of a man who had been given a second chance. "Thank you," Michael choked out, the words barely audible. "Thank you for everything." Ali smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile that reached his eyes. "You did it, brother," he said, his voice filled with warmth. "You saved yourself?" Lost in the shadows. The city's sodium glare seeped through the dirt-streaked panes of the tenements, bathing the scene in a jaundiced, sickly light. Michael burrowed deeper into the alcove of the defunct barber shop, the clammy brick leaching the heat from his threadbare jacket. A sour miasma of stale lager and burnt caramel hung in the air. He tightened his collar, a futile attempt to silence the echo of his mother's pleas, a constant refrain urging him homeward. Home, a faded photograph, a place where the aroma of rising dough briefly overpowered the pervasive tang of factory soot that clung to everything they owned. Now, even that memory soured with the disappointment he witnessed reflected in her gaze each time he stumbled in late, reeking of cut-rate liquor and fabrications. He watched as Frankie and Darnell swaggered by, their laughter like chipped glass shattering in the night. Frankie flipped him a cigarette, its ember pulsed like a demonic heartbeat in the gloom. "You rolling with us tonight, Mikey? Got something spicy brewin'?" Michael wavered. He understood the implications of spicy, a snatched purse, perhaps, or a clandestine card game with stakes far exceeding his means. He was supposed to be squirreling away cash for his sister's school uniform. He was supposed to be easing his mother's burden. Yet, the siren song of quick cash, the fleeting oblivion from his crushing obligations, proved too alluring. "Yeah," he croaked, his voice hoarse. "Count me in." The hours dissolved into a fog of fumes and illicit thrills. Adrenaline spiked as they liberated a car stereo, the danger a temporary anesthetic for the festering guilt within. Later, cloistered in the shadows of a dingy pool hall, he inhaled the smoke from a joint Darnell offered. The world sharpened, then dissolved into a soft focused blur, anxieties receding into a muted drone. He rationalized it as a one-time indulgence, a way to decompress after a grueling week. But in his heart, he knew it was more, a craving, an addiction that tightened its grip with each sunset. The darkness gathered, not just on the sidewalks, but inside his soul. He felt himself sliding, losing purchase on the man he once aspired to be, the man his mother still believed resided within him. The orange radiance outside seemed to mock his plight, a deceptive promise of warmth against the frigid, unyielding landscape of his choices. He was lost, adrift in a tempest of poor judgment, with no compass to guide him back to shore. A mother's heartache. The diner's cacophony of cutlery and chatter was the unending score to Sarah's existence. She swiped at the countertop, the ingrained stickiness a testament to countless spilled coffees and hurried meals. Each cleared plate, each impatient demand, chipped away at the mountain of bills threatening to bury them all. Especially the roof over Michael's head, which felt, with each passing day, a little less secure. Subtly, at first, she'd observed the change. Michael, once effervescent, had become subdued. The bright peals of laughter that used to fill their cramped apartment were now rare, muffled things. He retreated into his room, the cold blue glow of his monitor his only companion. Attempts to draw him out met an invisible barrier. "Honey, is everything all right?" she'd ventured, sitting beside him last week. He'd grown gaunt, shadows painting his eyes. A mumbled response about school pressures and needing space was all she got. She desperately wanted to accept it, but a cold premonition settled deep within her. A mother's instinct, a certainty that burrowed beneath the surface. The school's call confirmed her darkest suspicions. Absenteeism. Plummeting grades. A counselor's carefully worded concerns hinting at unthinkable possibilities. The specter of drugs haunted the conversation, a suffocating presence. Each shift at the diner now felt like a war of attrition. Her gaze would drift to the window, picturing Michael, lost in a world she couldn't reach. Guilt clawed at her. Was she sacrificing him on the altar of work? Had she failed to see the signs? She banished the thoughts, forcing her attention back to the present. She had to be his anchor. The discovery of the glass pipe, nestled beneath his bed, hit her like a physical blow. The cheap material seared her palm, a stark emblem of her powerlessness. Denial, of course, spilled from his lips, his eyes wide and unconvincing. "Michael," she'd begged, her voice fracturing. "Please, just tell me what's happening. I can't help if you shut me out." He merely shrugged and turned away. "Just leave me alone, Mom." The phrase echoed, a barbed hook snagged in her mind, each repetition driving the wedge deeper. It was a wall rising between them, a barricade of silence and secrets. She yearned to dismantle it, to bridge the chasm, to rescue him from the abyss that beckoned. But how? As Sarah refilled a surly trucker's cup, her reflection stared back from the mirrored wall. Her face was a road map of worry, her eyes bloodshot and weary. She looked weathered, aged beyond her years by the endless toil and the crushing weight of her son's descent. A wave of despair threatened to engulf her, leaving her gasping for air. She felt as though she were perched on the edge of a cliff, watching Michael plummet, utterly helpless to break his fall. Yet, deep within, a stubborn ember glowed. A mother's love, she knew, was a force to be reckoned with. She had to unearth a solution. She had to persevere. For Michael. Words of a champion. The apartment reeked of extinguished cigarettes and lingering sorrow. A beam of sunlight, thick with dancing dust, pierced the greasy windowpane, striking Michael's cheek. He remained still. Motion had become rare in recent days, a bizarre, personal landfill of discarded food containers and soiled clothing accumulating around him. He drifted in a hazy limbo, suspended between sleep and waking, merely existing. The television screen, a habitually silent, gray void, crackled with unexpected noise. An old boxing match blazed to life, the image grainy and monochrome. Usually, Michael ignored it, but a voice, sharp and penetrating even through the interference, caught his ear. "I am the greatest!" the on-screen figure proclaimed, a youthful face radiating self-assurance. Muhammad Ali. Michael recalled the name vaguely, a boxer, something about principles he'd dismissed. He still didn't care, not really. But that voice, it resonated somehow. Ali floated around the ring, a whirlwind of controlled energy. His opponent, a bulky figure with a determined face, threw haymakers that landed only on air. Ali weaved, dodged, mocked. Its antiquated quality held a certain compelling charm. Between rounds, the announcer shoved a microphone in Ali's face. Michael anticipated a boast, a prediction of swift victory. Instead, Ali spoke of something deeper. "It ain't just about power," Ali declared, his voice ringing with unwavering belief. "It's about conviction. Knowing yourself and fighting for your beliefs. A man devoid of vision is a man grounded. You gotta nurture a dream. You gotta fight for it. You gotta find the courage to stand strong, in body, spirit, and mind." Slumped on the couch, Michael experienced a tremor. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, a fleeting spark amidst the dying embers of his spirit. Yet, it was undeniably present. Strength. Purpose. Struggle. Concepts absent from his thoughts for what felt like an eternity. The bells sounded, and Ali became a flurry of motion once more. But Michael's attention wasn't on the choreography of the fight. It was riveted by Ali's face, the unwavering fire in his eyes. The words echoed within him. "If you even dream of beating me, you better wake up and apologize." He also recalled Ali embracing a man who had battled addiction for years. "He saw me." The man had confessed. Not just the label. Me. He saw me. Something long dormant began to stir within Michael. Not a dramatic revelation, but a fragile flicker of hope, struggling for purchase in the gloom. And yet, it was there, undeniable. His hand, trembling subtly, reached for the remote. He didn't silence the television. Instead, he nudged the volume higher. Ali's voice filled the room, a beacon cutting through the shadows. Perhaps, just perhaps, something remained worth defending. Perhaps, just perhaps, he wasn't beyond salvation. The figure on the screen, this force of nature, embodied the possibility of redemption. That embrace, though brief, had transformed them both. He remained there, listening, watching, the nascent spark within him growing slowly, hesitantly. A beacon of hope. The screen, a portal to another reality, splashed dancing shadows on the flaking plaster of Michael's walls. The television had been switched on almost unconsciously, a desperate measure to drown out the oppressive hush that had settled over his life. He'd been tracing the map of a single ceiling crack for what felt like an eternity, a grim cartography of his own stagnation. Then, a face broke through the static. Young, bold, radiating charisma. Muhammad Ali. Boxing held no prior appeal for Michael, quite the opposite, really. Yet, there was something in Ali's gaze, piercing through the aged technology, that seized his attention. More than just athleticism or an arrogant grace, it was the unwavering conviction in his pronouncements, the way he articulated his battles for justice, even with the world poised against him. Ali was speaking of Vietnam, of refusing to be a cog in a war machine he couldn't condone. Impudent, unapologetic, utterly compelling. Huddled in his threadbare armchair, Michael felt a forgotten spark ignite within him, admiration. So mired was he in his own perceived inadequacies, his self-constructed isolation, that fighting for principles, even holding them, appeared fanciful. And yet, watching Ali, a fragile tendril of hope unfurled in the arid landscape of his spirit. It wasn't merely the words themselves, but the timbre of his voice, the proud carriage of his head against a torrent of disapproval. It was a flare in the oppressive gloom, a stark reminder that defiance could be a virtue, that the ultimate triumph sometimes lay in simple, steadfast resistance. Soon, Michael was immersed in documentaries, interviews, anything that offered a glimpse into Ali's world. He discovered the battles waged outside the ring, the struggles against ingrained prejudice, the bedrock of his unwavering faith. He witnessed a man repeatedly brought low, yet always summoning the strength to recover. The more Michael absorbed, the clearer it became that Ali transcended the label of boxer. He was a living embodiment of resilience, a beacon of hope. And in that moment, surrounded by the decay of his neglected existence, Michael dared to entertain a thought. Could he possibly mirror that unyielding spirit? He began subtly. Making the bed. Eating a proper meal instead of subsisting on crumbs. He even ventured outdoors, the unfamiliar sunlight a painful assault on his senses. This wasn't a swift metamorphosis, of course. He still wrestled with the specters of his past, the heavy chains of his regrets. But now, when despair threatened to engulf him, he conjured Ali's image, the steady eyes, the knowing smile. He heard an echo of Ali's defiant words. Impossible is just a big word thrown around by small men who find it easier to live in the world they've been given than to explore the power they have to change it. Impossible is not a fact. It's an opinion. Impossible is potential. Impossible is temporary. Impossible is nothing. And for the first time in what felt like forever, Michael sensed a nascent ember of optimism. A delicate, fragile conviction that perhaps, just perhaps, he could fight his way back from the abyss. Small victories. Michael stared at the flickering television screen, the static a fitting soundtrack to the chaos in his head. Ali's face, younger, defiant, filled the screen during a replay of the rumble in the jungle. He muted the TV, the silence amplifying the gnawing emptiness within him. Ali had saved a man. A man battling demons just like him. He thought of Ali stepping down from the stage, the genuine connection, the simple hug. If Ali could do that for a stranger, maybe, just maybe, Michael could do something for himself. He started small. Ridiculously small. Instead of reaching for the bottle of whiskey that sat mocking him on the counter, he grabbed a bottle of water. The cool liquid burned a little going down, a physical reminder of the fire he was trying to extinguish. That night, he slept fitfully, plagued by dreams of fractured glass and the phantom taste of alcohol. But he didn't give in. The next morning, sunlight sliced through the grimy windowpane. He'd usually pull the curtains tighter, retreating into the darkness. Today, he forced himself to open them. The light felt abrasive, unwelcome, but he stood his ground, blinking until his eyes adjusted. He made himself a piece of toast, dry, tasteless, a far cry from the sugary cereal he craved, and ate it slowly, deliberately. He found Ali's autobiography tucked away in a box in the attic, its cover faded and worn. He started reading, losing himself in Ali's story, his unwavering belief in himself, his refusal to be defined by others. It gave him something to focus on other than the cravings that clawed at him. One afternoon, walking past the liquor store, the familiar pull almost overwhelmed him. The neon sign glowed like a siren's call. His heart hammered against his ribs. He clenched his fists, digging his nails into his palms. He remembered Ali's face, the look of compassion he had given the man with the sign. He pictured Ali fighting, absorbing blows, refusing to go down. He kept walking. He started taking longer walks, exploring the park near his apartment. The fresh air stung his lungs at first, but gradually, he began to notice things: the vibrant green of the leaves, the cheerful chirping of the birds, the laughter of children playing. He even managed a weak smile at a woman walking her dog. That night, he slept a little better. The dreams were still there, but they were less vivid, less insistent. He woke up feeling, not good, not yet, but a little less broken. He made himself breakfast, toast again, but this time with a thin spread of jam. It tasted like victory. Small victories, maybe, but they were victories nonetheless. And each one fueled his determination to keep fighting, one day, one moment, one breath at a time. A mother's belief. The clatter of dishes usually grated on Sarah's nerves, a constant reminder of the overflowing sink and the endless cycle of chores. But this morning, the sound was almost melodious. Michael was making breakfast. Not just grabbing a handful of cereal, but actually making it. Scrambled eggs, judging by the sizzle and the rich, buttery aroma that wafted into the living room. She watched him from the doorway, leaning against the frame, arms crossed loosely. He was humming, a low, almost tuneless sound, but a sound nonetheless. For months the house had been a tomb of silence, punctuated only by the clicking of the TV and the slamming of doors. This was different. He turned, a sheepish grin spreading across his face. "Morning, Mom. Figured I'd make something decent for once." Sarah's heart squeezed. It was a small thing, a ridiculously small thing, but it felt monumental. "It smells amazing, honey." He shuffled his feet, avoiding her gaze. "Yeah, well, I'm trying. Trying is all I ask." She stepped forward, gently touching his arm. The muscle beneath her fingertips felt firmer, somehow. As if he'd been doing something other than just sitting around. "I noticed you went for a run yesterday." He shrugged, a faint blush rising on his cheeks. Needed some air. Sarah knew better. He needed something, that much was clear. But he was reaching for it, reaching for something other than the numbing solace he'd found in the shadows. "I'm proud of you, Michael." The words were out before she could second-guess them, honest and raw. He looked up, startled. "Proud? For what?" "Making breakfast?" "For everything," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "For getting up every morning. For fighting. For trying. I know it's not easy." He stirred the eggs with a vengeance, his brow furrowed. "It's hard. I know, baby. But you're stronger than you think. You always have been." She cupped his face in her hands, forcing him to meet her gaze. "I believe in you, Michael. Never forget that. I always will." His eyes, usually guarded and distant, softened. For a fleeting moment, she saw the boy she remembered, the boy who loved building intricate Lego castles and rescuing stray kittens. The boy who had a spark, a fire in his belly. "Eat up," he mumbled, turning back to the stove. "Before it gets cold." The eggs were slightly overcooked, a little rubbery. But to Sarah, they tasted like hope. They tasted like the possibility of a future where her son wasn't just surviving, but living. Later that day, he asked if she wanted to go for a walk. "Just a short one," he said, "to the park." Sarah didn't hesitate. As they strolled along the paved path, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows, she listened to him talk. Not about his struggles, not about his pain, but about the trees, about the squirrels, about the new community garden they were building near the playground. It wasn't a grand declaration of change, no sweeping promises of a brighter tomorrow. It was simply a walk in the park, a shared silence punctuated by small observations. But for Sarah, it was everything. It was the first fragile bloom of hope, pushing through the frozen ground of despair. And she knew, with a certainty that settled deep in her bones, that her belief in him was the sunlight he needed to grow. The fight within. A nervous flutter began in Michael's fingers, a subtle vibration quickly blooming into a full-blown shudder. He clutched the chair's worn arms, knuckles bone-white, fighting to remain grounded against the inner turmoil. Almost a month. 28 days wrestled from the grip of addiction, 28 days battling the phantom torment beneath his skin. But now, the torment blazed. He traversed the cramped apartment, each footfall deliberate, each breath a conscious act. Usually, the stale scent of dust and old coffee provided a strange solace, yet tonight it felt like a tightening noose. He yearned for escape. The need raged, a wild animal battering the bars of his self-control. His gaze snagged on the television's flickering light, illuminating a vintage documentary. Muhammad Ali. The rumble in the jungle. Ali, fluid as mercury, mocking foreman, weathering savage blows, never yielding ground. A symbol of defiance, of poised strength against brute force. Michael slumped back, captivated. Ali's words echoed from the past, a different era. I hated every minute of training, but I said don't quit. Suffer now and live the rest of your life as a champion. Sweat sheen on Michael's brow, mirroring the pugilist's gleaming face in the ring. He, too, was absorbing punishment, unseen blows that threatened to topple him. The cravings hammered at him, a seductive chorus promising oblivion, release. He squeezed his eyes shut, conjuring Ali's indomitable face, the unwavering focus, the sheer force of will that carried him through brutal rounds. The man and his cardboard sign flashed in his mind. You saved my life. The scene dissolved into his own reflection in the dark screen. Did he possess that kind of grit? Could he withstand this? Sarah's hopeful gaze surfaced in his thoughts, the delicate trust she placed in his hands. The promise he'd made, to rebuild his life, to be a better man. He rose, the tremors receding, replaced by a burgeoning resolve. He crossed to the window, wrenching it open, and welcomed the cool night air. Below, the city lights glittered, a vast, intricate tapestry woven from countless lives, each with its own private battles. He wouldn't break. He refused to let the beast prevail. He would stand and fight. He would recall Ali's graceful moves, the unyielding spirit, the refusal to be defeated. He would outlast this internal struggle. Gratitude and recognition. The following years marked a slow, arduous ascent from profound despair. Unbeknownst to Michael then, the grainy loop of Ali from a clinic documentary had been his anchor. The champion's unwavering resolve, that defiant refusal to yield, had subtly infiltrated Michael's broken core. He began tentatively, volunteering at a soup kitchen, finding solace in the rhythmic clang of the knife against the cutting board, a strange, grounding ritual. His nights were consumed by GED classes, a hard-won victory. Later, community college beckoned, culminating in a social work degree. Eventually, he landed a job guiding fellow addicts away from the very precipice he'd once teetered on. Purpose bloomed, a quiet sense of worth cultivated in pulling others from the darkness he knew intimately. He constructed his life, stone by painstaking stone, fueled by an inarticulable gratitude. Ali, a figure almost mythological in his distance, often occupied his thoughts. Though the champ likely remained unaware of Michael's very existence, his impact resonated deeply. Then, an announcement, Ali's upcoming title defense. A surge of emotion threatened to overwhelm him, an overpowering need to repay an unpayable debt. He had to be there. Forget the ringside seats, the possibility of recognition. He scraped together every spare cent, securing the cheapest ticket available. The night before, he fashioned a sign from discarded cardboard, carefully etching the words, "You saved my life," with a thick black marker. The arena pulsed with fervent anticipation, a roaring symphony of voices and strobing lights. Michael felt diminished, lost within the throng. He hoisted his sign, his arms screaming in protest, clinging to the faint hope that Ali would see, would comprehend. The fight was a brutal ballet of force and indomitable will. Michael watched, transfixed, his pulse a frantic drumbeat. Despite the toll etched onto his face, Ali moved with surprising agility, an inner fire still blazing brightly. When the final bell tolled, crowning Ali the victor, an exultant cry ripped through the stadium. A blizzard of confetti obscured the scene. Michael, his throat raw from cheering, maintained his vigil, sign raised high. Then, improbably, it happened. Through the joyous pandemonium, Ali's gaze swept the crowd, a momentary stilling before locking on to Michael. Their eyes connected, a fleeting bridge across the roaring expanse. Michael glimpsed something within Ali's depths, perhaps recognition, perhaps mere empathy. Ali, sweat-drenched and breathing heavily, gestured, whispering urgently to his handlers. Defying the expected, he descended from the platform. A wave of astonishment rippled through the stands as the crowd yielded. Ali moved toward him, his focus unwavering. He stood before him, a titan made flesh. Speechless, Michael trembled, tears coursing down his cheeks. He simply raised the sign. Ali absorbed the message, his features softening. Extending a hand, he enveloped Michael in a potent, all-encompassing embrace. Silence descended, then an explosion of cheers. In that singular moment, Michael felt visible, acknowledged. His past, his battles, his reclamation, validated in that simple act. It transcended a mere hug, it became an emblem. A symbol of hope ignited, of tenacity rewarded, of the profound influence one person could wield over another's journey. The image, captured by a sea of cameras, became an instant phenomenon. It sparked dialogue, ignited possibilities. Ordinary people shared their own narratives of suffering and triumph, inspired by the improbable connection between a sporting icon and a stranger he'd never known. The hug radiated outwards, touching lives in unseen ways, a testament to the lasting resonance of compassion and the enduring strength of the human spirit.